A dead woman carrying fake IDs, tags, snipped off clothes, and secret codes hidden at the bottom of a suitcase. It all sounds like a paperback spy novel that you'd pick up from the dollar bin, right? But it really happened in a tucked-away corner of Norway, and in the middle of it all was the body of a woman who was hauntingly beautiful and who did everything in her power to keep her identity hidden. And she did it so well that we still have no idea who the hell she is. This is the story of the Isdal Woman, Norway's most perplexing mystery. It was November 29, 1970, right at the tail end of the Cold War and the final month of autumn in Norway. A man and his two daughters took a hike through Isdalen Valley, hoping to catch the last of the beauty before the winter snow covered the landscape. The trio stumbled onto the remains of a woman. Well, at that moment, all they could tell was that it was human. The body was so badly burned that no discernible features could be made out. Police arrived assuming that that was another case of a person taking their own life, as this area was well known for being the place where people came to quietly die without interruption. Their assumptions were drastically turned upside down once they started combing through the confusing crime scene. First, let's start with the autopsy report before we get to the other oddities at the scene that had already been nicknamed the Isdal Woman. The body was described as a Caucasian, brown-haired, petite female, but there were no identifying objects on her body to indicate where she'd come from. What little clothes she wore were burned beyond recognition, so they were of no help at all. She also had extensive dental work done. The gold caps in her teeth were worth quite a bit on their own, but the work itself was so expensive. This woman was not lowered to working class, that's for sure. Secondly, the gold caps also made it highly unlikely that she'd come from anywhere in Scandinavia. Gold-capped teeth just weren't a thing there, and it still isn't. She had around 50 sleeping pills in her digestive tract. The sleeping pills would lead one to believe that she tried to take her own life, but they were taken just 2 hours before she was lit on fire. She simply wouldn't have been in any condition to make the hike or to even light a match. Besides, why bother to take enough sleeping pills to kill herself, only to then light yourself on fire before the drugs killed her? That's overkill. Unless someone else wanted her to die and erase her identity too. The phenamol pills in her stomach were pink. Now, phenamol is sold under many different names and brandings. This pink version is specific to England and nowhere else in Europe. Another indication that she wasn't from Norway or the rest of Scandinavia. To further indicate that she hadn't done this to herself, the burns were focused on the front side of her body, like she'd been doused intentionally to obscure her features, hair and hands. If she'd lit herself on fire, chances are she'd have dumped the gasoline over her head, spreading the fire from the top down, causing her back and front to be burnt as well. But it was only her front, and the smoke in her lungs proved that she'd been alive when she was lit on fire. Another person being present was further confirmed by the outline of a shoe's imprint above her right knee. The print was too distorted to make out much, other than the size was larger than her own feet. Close to the body was a fireplace. Most of what was burned in the pile was rendered to nothing but ash and a mess of melted and twisted rubble. But the few items that they were able to identify were a single stocking, one rubber boot, the inner soles of a shoe, a reusable shopping bag or purse, an umbrella, an almost empty bottle of liquor, 2 bottles of water, a plastic spoon, and a plastic lid of a container, a checkered green scarf, a watch, and some earrings, a used box of matches, some crackers, and a fur hat. The watch stopped at exactly 12:32. That coincides with witness reports that there was smoke coming from that general area 6 days prior at around 12 p.m. On the same day that they saw smoke coming from the valley, a 10-year-old boy and his father reported seeing a petite woman with brown hair on the trails that morning. She was accompanied by 2 men, and they noticed her because she and her companions were dressed in clothes more suitable for going to the shops instead of the more appropriate hiking attire. So Miss Isdal and all of her possessions were taken out to the middle of nowhere to erase her off the face of the earth. Needless to say, police had nothing. So they did the only thing they could do: send out officers to question every shop and hotel in the nearest town of Bergen. They also found shoes, shopping bags, fur hats, and clothes. All of them had any identifying labels carefully removed from them. Even the insoles of the shoes, where branding would be, were peeled off. 2 tubes of prescription eczema cream had their labels manually scratched off to remove any identifying information. There were maps of Scandinavia, a medical scalpel, and a high-end wig that was later traced to France. There was a ball of what looked to be clay that turned out to be paraffin wax, a substance used to start fires and to waterproof clothes. It can also be used to waterproof paper and other items that need to be kept dry. And before you ask, paraffin was not used to light her on fire. She was ignited with gasoline. There were also currencies from 5 different countries, including Germany, Sweden, Norway, Belgium, and Britain. She had about a dozen different silver memento spoons, the kind that are sold at gift shops for travelers to collect. From the looks of the amount of memento spoons, she was extremely well-traveled. There were typed and handwritten notes inside the bags that were coded, but weren't as complex as it looked at first. They were decoded pretty quickly and turned out to be a form of shorthand for various hotels, the country and city that they were located in, and dates. These hotels and the dates that coincided with them were used to create a path and a timeline for the Isdal Woman's travels, and they were corroborated by hotel employees, taxi drivers, and shops, where she'd brought clothes and shoes. Apparently, she'd traveled to all of the countries that she had currencies of, and a few more besides, and she wore a wide variety of different wigs at each location. Witnesses reported that she had had an American accent in one country, then a French accent in another. Some described her as Jewish, Slavic, and one witness even said he thought she was Asian. So police now had a woman who traveled between European countries every few days. She coded her hotel stays, used false names, always paid in cash, used many different names, brought new clothes and wigs in every country, and constantly changed her accent, not to mention going to great lengths to hide all identifying traces of herself. And she'd been doing it for nearly a year. That's a long time for someone to keep up such an exhausting bounce around just for the hell of it. At the last hotel she booked into, just 6 days before she was thought to have died, and only a few miles away from the Isdalen hiking trails, the staff reported that she was polite and quiet, but that she had a nervous air about her. She kept glancing out of the windows and generally looked like she was expecting someone to come in through every door. Nervous was the word often used to describe her. While there she claimed to be a Belgian national, though the employees thought her accent sounded more like German or French. Lady Isdal wasn't just some paranoid mental patient that escaped. She was seen with several men by witnesses in all of the countries she visited. Each time, the gentlemen were different, and they usually met her in pairs. And though witnesses reported that she seemed nervous, she was not at all described as unhinged at all. Even more suspicious, the cities she visited almost all had military bases located in them. A year later, the Norwegian police closed the case, citing the cause of death as most likely her taking her own life. No, it's not just you that thinks that's insane. Even the police did, but they had no physical evidence to suggest otherwise. And every time they tried to contact known international spy agencies, they were met with complete silence. The thing was that Scandinavia was a central point for the Cold War, so they were encouraged to keep a wrap on this as much as possible, to avoid the scandal of admitting that any spy agency had infiltrated them at all. Describing Scandinavia's role in that era would take an entire video on its own, but let's just say that they were one of the main locations for the Allied powers to test state-of-the-art submarines and some serious rockets. So this mysterious woman was buried in Bergen, and her remains are still there to this day. Even now, more than 50 years later, she has never been identified, claimed by family, or claimed by any government agency. In 2016, We got a surprising update with new technology. The Isdal Woman's teeth were run through tests, and it was determined that she was between 35 and 40 years old, and that she grew up in South Germany or on the borders of France or Switzerland. Possibly coming from Germany actually offers some interesting possibilities. Even more than 2 decades after the Second World War ended, there were still underground ties to Nazi operatives, Soviet coalitions, and all sorts of shadow factions that were still very much alive. Those spies, and there were thousands of them, were deployed with no paper trail. Their identities were wiped and all records of them destroyed. For her to not exist on public record is perfectly plausible. But at least her genetic information has been uploaded, and if anyone's DNA who's ever distantly related to her appears in the system, it'll allow us to eventually build a family tree around her, so maybe one day we'll get a lucky break. Naturally, most people assume she was indeed a spy, one of the thousands of spies running around Russia, Europe, the USA, and who knows where else during the Cold War. Her disguises, paying in cash, the false names, and constant movement certainly fits the description. But others believe that she was simply a courier for the criminal underworld, possibly smuggling diamonds or drugs. I don't buy the criminal courier angle, though. Gang-related killings and cartels have many ways of killing their enemies and traitors. A lonely hillside with enough barbiturates to kill a horse and then lighting her on fire? It just doesn't fit the execution of a traitor or a drug mule. And others believe that she was simply a mentally ill woman who took her own life after suffering from an extreme case of paranoia. Personally, I think that someone who kept multiple aliases, currencies, hotel bookings, and numerous personas in order for nearly a year had to have a clear state of mind to juggle all that. Anyone with a serious mental condition would have fractured completely by the second week of managing a ruse this elaborate. And what about the strange men she kept meeting? If she were trying to hide her identity because she was paranoid enough to think that the government was reading her mind through her tinfoil hat, then why were they hiding their identities? And why would they not come forward to claim her? For me, all of this oozes delicious Cold War spy-era shenanigans. But if she was a spy, then why kill her? Well, there are 2 options. 1, her mission was compromised, and the agency that discovered her killed her, burning everything connected to her. Or she failed her mission, or realized that she'd been compromised, and her own agency that did the deed, destroying her possessions rather than taking it with them for further examination. The drugs were probably given to her as an act of mercy. If I were her, I'd take the barbiturates rather than suffer through the flames too. That's why I think that her own people killed her. A separate agency would have been much less kind and less likely to choose such a secluded spot, and they'd have definitely taken all of her belongings to study them, rather than burn the evidence. As you can probably tell by now, I'm on the side of the theory train that thinks the Isdal Woman was a spy that was taken out by her own people, possibly even knowing full well that she was walking out there to die. But you might have other theories, so leave your thoughts down below. You know that our team is always over there taking notes. And leave a like and don't forget to subscribe while you're at it. See you in the next one, people.